When you're lost, what do? Do you look at a minimap, search online for a guide, or follow the big yellow wall? There's a discussion at the moment over hand-holding in video games. The idea that players always need to be directed to their next goal has been blowing up recently, and it's the same people that rage at you potentially having summons in Elden Ring. The question is, do games guide players too much? And with this discussion, first check out What's the Problem with Yellow Paint. His video is far more articulate than mine. He goes on to say that games have all sense of hand-holding, which he calls signposting. This is where the game directors and designers lead you in the way so you can carry on the narrative and the storyline. And this can be done in subtle ways. He uses the example as low lighting in Portal 2, potentially in God of War, where your son will tell you what direction you need to move in, or something as blatantly as obvious as an arrow pointing in the right direction. So the question is, do games hold your hand too much? Do they guide you? Ever since I was young, I played video games and it always had a sense of guiding me in the direction to my next objective. What we call signposting. Having a ginormous question mark above someone's head so you know that's the next place to get your mission. Following a green dot on the minimap and walking past every character. Or what people are referring to, following the yellow wall. What the yellow wall is wherever you need to traverse round sections of the game, you notice that there'll be some kind of bright colour, normally yellow or white, to indicate that's where you need to climb. Note, hand-holding and signposting is very different, and every single game needs to direct players, otherwise you lose attention span, you get lost, you get confused, and then you could fundamentally stop playing. But the argument is to be had that the yellow walls takes you out of the immersion, and doing it in a way that's untasteful for the players makes it seem like we are wet sponges that can't process any information. So the first thing I think about in these situations is that is correct. I feel like the yellow wall is a little too much, but that's also coming from someone who's been playing games for about 24 years, very experienced in games. I'm pretty good at games and I can notice the signs. When you see someone using the yellow walls or something of such, you're referring to maybe a player who only plays the games 2 hours a week. Well, with Dragon's Dogma just around the corner, we are speaking about hand-holding and how Dragon's Dogma is averting from that strategy. You're not following an objective, you need to go your own path and find your own clues. There's no noticeable question marks or where you're heading. I think can be a reason for people using such yellow walls is for pacing in a video game. And here's what I mean. State Star Wars Fallen Order or Jedi Survivor. You have noticeable parkour elements which are guided by yellow stripes. These are seamless and fluent, and you know the next point you're meant to jump to because they're marked on the map. This allows you to be fluent in your movement and to keep the pace going so you can fundamentally do them parkour scenes once and only once. When you die, it takes yourself out of the immersion when you have to repeat it. So I feel like the first game that comes to mind that introduced this was Mirror's Edge. The idea that parkour was related to how far you could keep moving and going forward, and the way to traverse around the entire map was looking at bright red blocks. These objects allowed you to know which ones you could interact with, so while you're moving you didn't have to process a lot of information on where to go next. So with this kind of scenario, it's information overload. So where you're meant to be pushing through, doing other things in the game, something like a yellow wall, a yellow box, a white cliff, instead of you constantly walking around the map trying to figure out what the fuck I'm doing, you know what direction you're going in so you can carry on and you can keep the pace of the story. But not all titles need to be like this. If it's an open RPG, you can give the players that opportunity to discover and find things. But I find myself when I'm in these RPG games and there is a objective marker, I will skip past the city, skip past all the exploration to focus on the main objective ahead. Same with minimaps. I'll be looking at the minimap every 5 seconds like it's a bloody League of Legends match, not really focusing on my surroundings and where to go, just simply that I need to go northwest, and if I keep going that way I get to where I need to go. The point I'm trying to make is I don't believe they're insulting our intelligence by adding these markers, but it could be a decision in pacing, and it could be that it's been overdone and now it's become a staple in games to add these borders. But at the beginning, element of signposting to allow the players to carry on in something that wasn't meant to be a highlight of the game. For example, in Uncharted, where you're in a combat scene and once you finish you need to traverse around the map to get to your next point. The climbing part is a segment of the story, but it's not the main focus. You trying to figure out what rocks you can climb on, and if you can climb on every single ladder might sound cool and immersive, but it can take you out of the experience. And the narrative director from Gearbox, the makers of Gears of War, states this. They say that players need to be directed, but it doesn't need to be noticeable. Good game design in my eyes is about how you feel in the moment. Like I said, Jedi Survivor, you had parkour elements that didn't feel rewarding. But then you had parkour elements in, say, Portal. I felt satisfied when I did some good traversal. Portal 2 wasn't an open-ended puzzle. You were very much directed in where you needed to do things, but it was done subtly. Like they mentioned, low light. And with the opportunities in Portal, I feel like you can slow down the pacing, allowing players to discover and traverse around the scenes. When it's something like Star Wars or God of War, you have these narrative focuses where you need to push through the story, and now you just have these small little hurdles. So with this topic, with the idea that our game's hand-holding you with this yellow wall syndrome, my opinion in it is all dependent on pacing. I've never been really offended by this. I don't know if you can relate, but this yellow wall doesn't insult my intelligence. I just know that's the direction I need to go, and I can just carry on. I find in some games when I'm not being directed where I need to go, I either get confused or I start exploring something else completely different. The main focus of the game and the main storyline I might never actually end up touching, and then I end up losing interest in the game over time. I've explored the world and enjoyed it, say like a game like Elden Ring, explored the world, traversed everywhere, but I haven't focused on the main story, and now I'm 90 hours in and I'm bored. So what's your opinion on this? Leave in the comments down below. Do games hold your hand too much, or is it a creative decision from the devs? Please check out What's the Problem with Paint. He goes into this very much strong detail on signposting and this concept. I've been Jack, and I'll see you in the next one.